Today with lots of sunshine and light winds. It'll feel quite warm again this afternoon, although it'll be cooler across western parts. Highs of 16 Celsius.
Have lunch with Allan Beswick. BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. You all right? Good-o. I am Allan Beswick. What about that, then? Joan Bakewell. Ooh. Didn't meet her. Busy in the studio, never met her. An outrage and a scandal. So, Heather Stock gets Joan Bakewell, and I get Justin Bones. Tells you what to think of me, doesn't it? Dear God. That's all I've got to say. She's delightful, and he's, well, him. There's not a lot you can say beyond that, really, that'll rescue it. Some fantastic, well, a fantastic photograph in the Daily Mail this morning. There's an exhibition of dinosaurs. Now, we've had exhibitions of dinosaurs here. Do you remember that great big exhibition? I don't know whether you went to it. There's a hotel just up the road. Well, at the time it wasn't a hotel, it was the old refuge building. You remember? Huge building just up the road from the BBC, about halfway between the BBC and the Palace Theatre. And when they were sort of converting it and wondering what the hell to do with it, that for a short time they used it as an indoor exhibition space. Do you remember? And there was a dinosaur exhibition. I didn't go, I wish I had. And I went to the dinosaur exhibition at the Museum of Science and Industry, and I do from time to time go to Manchester Museum, where they're very good at dinosaurs. Anyway, to move on slightly, instead of dribbling on about every dinosaur I've never seen. Yeah, but there's a photograph on page 3 of the Daily Mail today of a dinosaur's head with its teeth sticking out, and it's absolutely gigantic. The distance, its mouth is ajar, and the distance between the front of its mouth and the back of its mouth is about 5 foot. And it looks like a proper dinosaur. Now, my guess is that it isn't a real one. Yeah, I know, you can't fool me. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. It's among 15 creatures which were being brought to life, in the Walking with Dinosaurs exhibition named after the BBC. And it'll be at the London's O2 Arena in August. And it's worth going. I hope one of them gets Michael Jackson, but they'll have indigestion. But it's worth going. More than 25,000 tickets for the spectacular have already been sold. And the Tyrannosaurus, which is what this one is, all the kids know what that is, I don't. The Tyrannosaurus is expected to be the main draw. But T-Rexes, however, will be dwarfed by the Brachiosaurus, a long-necked herbivore, the model of which is 32 foot and 32 foot tall and 72 foot from nose to tail. But these things move. They're all done by animatronics. I know, I never knew what that word meant either, but it means sort of what it implies, really. Yeah. And the photograph in the Daily Mail is of a little kid with his hand in the jaws of death. And the dinosaur, if it fell down, straight downwards, he would fall into its mouth. That would be it. He'd be gone. Fantastic photograph, but what a great exhibition. I might go to London to have a look at that. So might you, if you're sharpish. And then next to it, there's a story about the return of the police whistle. Yeah, they had their last blast more than 30 years ago, but now police whistles are making a comeback. Beat bobbies are using them to help tackle antisocial behaviour. 25 whistles have been issued to neighbourhood officers in Falmouth, which is in Cornwall, if you're interested. And Sergeant Cara Trott said, at the moment, they're mainly being used to attract the attention of cyclists who may be committing any offences. Some people felt that shouting after a cyclist wasn't the politest form of speaking to people. Well, if they're doing something illegal, fully entitled to shout at them, but they are. Offences that could earn a cyclist a piercing blast include riding them one way down a one-way street, or without lights, for example, or presumably on the footpath, or have they made that compulsory now? But the thing that's here is it's not the normal police whistle. I bet you've got one. It's like, you know, with the Scout whistle. The whistle they've depicted, the Daily Mail, their picture, is, I'm afraid, the old thunderer. You know, like a referee's whistle. I've got one of them. Yeah, well, I was once a referee. I've still got the whistle. I was rubbish at it, absolutely rubbish at it. But I was, as you can expect. But I was a referee. And so I had a go at it. And so I bought a whistle. I've still got that. But I think police whistles, they didn't go that sort of... brrr. They went, whoa, didn't they? Have you got one? Have you got one handy? Because I only saw this when I got in, so I brought mine in. If you've got a whistle, a police-type whistle, or even a thunderer, give us a call and blow it down the phone. You'll be all right. Loads of people have them by the phone to deal with those unsolicited phone calls. Well, you won't get that treatment from me, because your phone call, of course, is not unsolicited. We are inviting you there too. So 0161 228 2255. And didn't the police whistle, whereas this is being used to attract the attention of recalcitrant cyclists, didn't the police whistle, wasn't that used to attract the attention of another copper? You know, the copper on the next beat. So if all hell was letting loose, then the copper blew his whistle, and his mate on the next beat went, hello, hello, hello. Well, that's how they talk, isn't it? Hello, 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 he'd say, and he'd go legging it towards the sound of the whistle. Kevin says, an exhibition of dinosaurs. Isn't that a Rolling Stones tour? Very good. Very, very good. I like that. It very nearly is, isn't it? Yeah, I like that.
Your Sunday morning lie-in with Mike Shaft.
So what about the aspects of Sharia law that British people would find intolerable?
We're simply saying in matters of marriage, divorce, there should be an option for people, just like there is for Jewish people. They could go to Beth Din, which could resolve their problem.
Mike Shaft.
What's going on now in Northern Ireland? What advice can you give?
There's the Corrymeela community based just outside Belfast who bring together people from both sides of the divide and aim to help them hear each other's stories and really have an opportunity to hear from one another about their experiences.
Manchester's faith, spirit and life's difficult questions with Mike Shaft.
I absolutely love it.
Sunday morning from 7 on BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. 0161 228 2255. You can talk about anything. You can even blow a whistle at me if you wish. A wolf whistle would be very nice. Not had one of them for years. So it's 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And the text number, of course, 07786 206 951. Simon in Haywood. Hiya, Simon.
Do you like that?
I did like it. You're a little close to the phone.
Oh, I do apologise.
That was a police whistle.
That was a police whistle.
I know, there was no thundering, you see.
A genuine Aidensfield police whistle.
Really? Turn away again.
Hang
so
on.
You're not
Just let me take my earpiece off, because it'll sound a bit better then. Hold on.
I don't see how taking your earpiece. It'll sound better to you. It won't sound any better to me.
Because it's got the microphone attached to it, so
Well, that
the
makes a
microphone's right by me gob.
Yeah, but what you need to do here,
Yeah.
right, this is a sound technician teaching you here.
Right.
Don't blow it into the microphone.
I can't help it. It's stuck. The microphone is stuck right to the
Listen
side of
to
my head.
me,
That's
listen
why I
to me,
said I'll
listen.
take it away.
Right. Well, blow away from it. In the opposite direction. And then we can hear it. Or not. We can only hear it. You sound a bit like an asthmatic, if I may say. Help, help, there's an asthmatic who needs help.
Funny you should say that. That any better?
No.
Okay, well, I don't know how it sounds on the radio, because obviously my
I know you don't.
stopped.
Well, what you need to do, if you'd have paid attention before...
And
Right.
if you paid attention, Alan, you'd know I can't turn my head away from the
Listen to me.
microphone because it's stuck at the side of my mouth.
Yeah, well, you'd be dangerous. Just put the microphone, the phone, the whole thing on a table.
Yes.
Next to you.
Yes.
Disconnect it from your person.
Yes.
Walk about 5 feet away. I
Right.
didn't think I was going to have to be doing this today. Then blow it, then come back.
Okay.
Is that beyond you?
No, I can't.
Crying out loud.
Hold on.
Right. I think the word perfect springs to mind. That was perfect, Simon.
Thank you.
Absolutely perfect. This copper's running all towards your house now. Were you a copper then? Or is
No. I was up in Heartbeat country.
Oh, in Yorkshire.
In Yorkshire. Yeah, I don't like using that word. It means
No,
I've crossed the Pennines.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable.
I did actually go without my passport, so I don't want to get caught. But I bought this genuine Aidensfield police whistle, made in China. Kind of says it all, doesn't
that's
it?
like that Bob Newhart diffusing a bum. It says made in China. Yeah, it could still be one of ours.
But yeah, I picked this up as a little souvenir.
And what's it called? Say it to me slowly.
It's just an Aiden's... Is it called Aidensfield, the
I'm
police
asking you.
station in I don't watch
Oh, I
Heartbeat.
see. I see. That's a place in Heartbeat.
Yes.
Well, you've got me flummoxed. I've never
Well,
watched it.
I've never watched it. It was my late wife and her in-laws, and my in-laws insisted that we went up there, and this is what I brought back. a champion police whistle, it's called.
Champion.
But
Fantastic.
given that it's made in China, champion is probably a description rather than a sort of brand.
Possibly so. Possibly so. Well, thank you for that.
No problem.
Have a good day, mate.
You too, mate.
There you are, you see. So that's what the old police whistle sounded like. But as I say, the photograph depicted above the story in the Daily Mail is that of a thunderer. Malcolm in Offerton. How are you
Hello,
doing?
I've got one in my hand.
Steady now. You got one of what?
And it's got little peas that rattle.
Oh, you've got the thunderer?
I've got...
That's
yes,
what it's
I have
called.
an
No, that's what it's called.
I've got an Acme Thunderer in my hand, made in
fantastic.
Sheffield. By the way, made in Sheffield. I've had a look.
Good on you. Well, we're going to do what we did with him, with Simon.
Right, okay.
You've got to put your phone down and walk about 3 paces away and then give it a blow. We'll hear that.
And then I'll
ready?
come back. Okay.
Well, if you like. Yeah, I'm not bothered.
All right,
Go on.
bugger you then. All right, bye.
Go on, do that and then come back. Fantastic.
Are your ears still there?
Yeah, my ears are still here. Yeah, I think I'm offside, but apart from that, I'm all right.
You've been offside for a long time, Alan. And I will miss your off the ball, off the inside post comments when you disappear to breakfast time.
Well, I'll still be there. I'll still be making them.
You can bugger off. I'm not getting up that early for anyone.
You can do iPlayer. You'll be all right.
Oh,
I mean,
but then I can't send you abusive emails.
Yeah, you can. I'll just get them a day late.
Oh, well, okay.
You know, they can get me up early, but they can't make me clever. Have a good day, Malcolm.
Speak to you soon, Alan. Bye-bye.
Malcolm in Offerton with the old thunderer and Simon with the police whistle. You might wonder why we're going on about whistles today. And frankly, so also do I, now that we've done it. They're like trained dogs, aren't they? A bit of Pavlov there. So we've had a thunderer and we've had the police whistle. Are there any others? I mean, I can whistle. See? And I can do the very loud whistle, you know, when you're trying to attract your mate's attention when you're young. But I'm not going to do that because it sounds really awful on the wireless. Yeah, it does. Are there any other? I can't think now. I suppose there are. Yeah, blowing a whistle down the phone on radio as entertainment. I bet Lord Reith's turning in his grave, says Brian. You mean revolving wreath? He's been doing that since I come here 20 years ago, don't you worry. He's getting used to it now. Terry says, oh, this is Tightwad Terry. Yeah, he goes to the pictures on a Wednesday because it's half price. He does, tight Helgit. Anyway, Terry says in an email, I went to the cinema yesterday and can only say that I wasted 2.5 hours of my life watching a film called Watchmen. Don't bother, it's rubbish. Fair enough. But you see, you've got to look on the bright side, Terry. You wasted 2.5 hours of your life, but you're only paid for 1.25 hours. Because it was half price Wednesday, wasn't it? I know you wouldn't give a door a bang. Anyway, and I have decided, says Terry from Tilsley, and I have decided that when I become Prime Minister for the day, in my make-believe world, he says, I'm going to create new laws, but only based around the cinema. And they are as follows. 1. No food at all, with the exception of unwrapped sweets. 2. No drinks. People always slurp them at the end. 3. No one is allowed to sit right in front of me while there are 300 other chairs to pick from. 4. No one is allowed in once the film has started. And 5, no one's allowed out once the film has started. I can never work out, he says, why people pay to watch a film only to get up and go to the toilet in the middle of it. Well, it'll be all them drinks they've slurped. Alan, I seriously think I'm becoming a grumpy old man. Terry, you're not. You've been one for years. But there you are. It is annoying, isn't it? It is annoying. And yet he didn't like the film Watchmen. But what the hell? John in Stockport says, Alan, far more people die from head injuries in road traffic accidents and on ski slopes. Well, we know the relevance of that this morning, don't we? Do you reckon we should all start wearing crash hats in the car? John in Stockport. Certainly wear them when skiing. Alan, why is there only one competition commission? Yeah, it used to be called the Monopolies Commission when the joke was first written, and it wasn't funny then. But Stephen Northwich, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, the story that I suspect John was obliquely referring to was the story of the actress Natasha Richardson, English actress, died in what seemed like a trivial event on the ski slopes, fell over, presumably, we think, banged her head, felt nothing of it, felt fine. And then, of course, a few hours later was fighting for her life and died. There's nothing you can say, is there? I mean, she's a reasonably famous actress, so we perhaps feel it a little bit, but there's nothing you can say. It happens. It happens. On that ski slope that day, I suspect there were hundreds of people, and none of them are dead. And I suspect not very many of them wore a crash helmet. It's just one of those things. You're bobbling along in your life, minding your own business, and suddenly, boom, that's the end of your life. It happens. Crap happens. You could, of course, spend the whole of your life living in cotton wool. And then, of course, it may well be that you live in cotton wool and spoil the life you've got. You just end up having a tediously insular life. We have to take risks from time to time, even if we don't understand them. If they don't pay off and you end up killed, well, it's a rare occurrence. Just gone 12 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Anna Dawson.
Joseph Fritzl has told a court in Austria he's sorry from the bottom of his heart for holding his daughter captive for 24 years and repeatedly raping her, fathering 7 children. Despite his admission of guilt, the jury's retired to consider a verdict. A Manchester MP says banks still aren't lending enough to local businesses, despite the government urging them to do so. Speaking in the Commons, the Manchester Central Labour MP Tony Lloyd says sky-high interest rates are still being charged. And directors, critics and fellow actors have joined family and friends in paying tribute to the British actress Natasha Richardson, who's died in the States following a skiing accident. Her fall on a nursery slope has led to calls for ski helmets to be made mandatory. Manchester's weather, bright and dry today, highs of 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Let's start firstly on the M60, all moving quite well around the Ring Road at the moment. Not doing too badly either over the Pennines, quite clear. And if you're on the M6 again, you should have a nice run ahead of you. Let's take a quick look to Ancoats. The usual roadworks on Pollard Street between Malta Street and Every Street, closing the carriageway with diversion signed locally. And if you're on Portland Street travelling westbound from Minshall Street to Charlton Street, one lane's closed just past the hotel. It's the left-hand lane that's closed off. That does tend to cause peak hour delays along Newton Street, heading city-bound. But don't forget, if you can update me, the number's 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic. BBC Radio Manchester.
So you just heard in the bulletin there with Anna the suggestion that people on the ski slope should be required to wear a crash helmet. And presumably one of those like cyclists wear rather than one of those like motorcyclists wear. I don't know how much protection there is in that from what happened to Natasha Richardson. I've no idea. But I did read a story a couple of days ago that is, in a way, connected. And it took me back to the days before seatbelts were compulsory. And I'll tell you for why. The argument went like this, that insurance companies are now saying to cyclists who are involved in accidents where they get a head injury, that if they were, for example, entitled, maybe they're disabled or as a result of the accident or what have you, and they were entitled to, and this is not unheard of, £1 million compensation from another, the third party, who may well have been at fault. So there they are. They've won the case hands down, and they're entitled to be looked after for the rest of their life, and they get £1 million in court. What some judges have started hinting at is that if it was a head injury and they were on their bicycle, that the award will be diminished because of what the legal eagles call contributory negligence. In other words, by not wearing a crash helmet, you were a party to your own downfall. Now, before you start saying, well, that can't happen, it did happen. It did happen. It happened in the pre-seatbelt era, before the seatbelt became compulsory. If you were in a road traffic accident and you were injured, because you'd been thrown forward in your seat in the car, and you weren't wearing a seatbelt, judges started to take account of the fact that that had contributed in some way to your accident, or to your injuries, not to your accident, but to your injuries. And they started to reduce any compensation by 15%. That was the going rate, 15%. So a person wearing a seatbelt involved in a road traffic accident got X amount of money, and the person who was not wearing one, in identical circumstances other than the seatbelt issue, got 15% less. They got X minus 15%. And they're starting to hint that that might happen with regards to cyclists. And I don't know. I mean, maybe they do, but I get fed up. I really do get fed up of all the namby-pambies, don't you? I mean, life has risk. It does. It's full of risk. A life without risk is an utterly tedious life. Utterly tedious. Because you've got to take a chance or two. Isn't that the whole point of skiing? There's nothing else to offer in skiing. Maybe there is to you, but I can't see what it is. The whole point of skiing is you stand on a couple of planks like an idiot and you throw yourself down the side of a mountain, going as fast as you can, in the hope that at the bottom it'll flatten out and you'll stop. That's it. There's no benefit from that. The wind in your face, dear God, you can stand at the coast and get that. The only benefit is the speed, and the great thing about the speed is the fear. People who jump out of aeroplanes. If jumping out of aeroplanes was guaranteed to be incident-free, half the people that do it wouldn't do it. It's about that overcoming the fear, overcoming the danger. So if they take all the danger out of our lives, as I say, dear God, what sort of a boring life will we have? Is that what you want? I don't know. What do you think about the idea that somebody who is involved in they're knocked off their bicycle, they've done out wrong, they're just peddling along, minding their own business, along comes one-eyed git and bumps into them. Bump, off they go. One eye on the road, one on his laptop. Bump, off they go, fall over, smashes his head open, and the judge says, well, had you been wearing a crash helmet, your injuries would have been less. So we're taking that into consideration, so you get 15% less. You were just riding along, minding your own business. And they look stupid as well, them helmets. They do, they look absolutely stupid. Anyway, there you are. 0161 228 2255. If you want to join us, you can. It's dead easy. Just pick up your phone and run for it, as they say. Papers have still got the story of the man, Sean Hodgson, who was released from prison yesterday. And he's a middle-aged man now. Freed. The man who spent 27 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. A mentally ill man who spent 27 years in jail for murder he did not commit was finally freed yesterday. As 57-year-old, that means he was 30. He had all his life before him. He was 30 when he went to jail. Sean Hodgson declared himself ecstatic at the quashing of his conviction. It emerged years ago. Had it not been for further mistakes, this time by the Forensic Science Service, he would have been released earlier. He was jailed for confessing to a 1979 murder of a 22-year-old barmaid. At the trial, he's said by his own defence to be a pathological liar. But it was, well, his conviction came in the days before DNA. And then 10 years ago, his lawyers went to the Crown Prosecution Service, I suppose, the Forensic Science Service, and went to them and said, now that we've got DNA, have you got any DNA from the scene of the crime involving, or alleged to involve, Sean Hodgson? And they said, no, not got it. Yeah, that's what they said. Now, I'm not suggesting that they hid it somewhere and said, don't tell him. But they didn't have it, because there was a bit of chaos knocking about, one presumes. And then, recently, they found it. And you just think, crying out loud, this man was not only shafted 27 years ago, he was shafted 10 years ago as well. What sort of a system are we relying upon? It's just scary. And the Daily Mail have started their... Now, let me work this out. Quintannual. Is that a proper word? 5-yearly, anyway. They're on their 5-yearly campaign about D-Day. Terrifying, chaotic and bloody. But D-Day was one of the greatest chapters in our history. Who says that? Max Hastings. So that's fair enough. And the suggestion here is that France, even Germany, who, let's face it, lost, France, Germany, America, and I think Canada, and maybe Australia, are tipping up in big style, as they say, on the 50th anniversary. It's not the 50th, is it? It's the 65th anniversary of D-Day, which, of course, is in June. And the British, according to the Daily Mail, are frankly doing virtually nothing. Daily Mail headline. As fury grows over Labour's refusal to pay for the veterans' return to the Normandy beaches, the Daily Mail invites you to help them into battle for the D-Day heroes. A huge wave of support gathered yesterday for D-Day veterans desperate to attend the 65th anniversary of the Normandy landings. As revealed by the Daily Mail, the government has shamefully decided to ignore the event, so they're not going, not sending any ministers or anything. The Ministry of Defence rejected requests for financial aid to survivors and says there'll be no further official commemoration of D-Day until its centenary. When, frankly, I mean, you know, frankly, it's 35 years off, they'll be dead. They'll be average age 110, or, put another way, dead for 25 years. How utterly ludicrous. In 100 years' time, well, 35 years' time, when it's a century, forget it. But what about the guys who are alive now? What about, I think there's about 500 of them, give or take a dozen. There's about 500 of them still alive who were in the D-Day landings. Simple question. Should the government pay to take all those that want to and can of the 500 to the beaches for the 65th anniversary of the D-Day landings? Do you think the government should pay? Do you think it's time we forgot it and let's go back? Let's go back in 100, you know, when it's been 100 years, in 35 years' time, and do a great big historic event and remember the fallen and all of that. What do you say? 0161 228 2255. Anthony in Northenden. Hi.
Hi, Alan. I've got an interesting thing came with my electric bill this morning, and it says you might be the price of the cost of electricity isn't just the price of fuel, and then it has a breakdown, and the price of fuel is 53% wholesale electricity, 24% delivered to your home, 13% cost to service your account, 5% VAT, and this is the one that I've not heard of before, 3% government obligation to help the environment, and 2% profit. And that was it, and I thought, 3% government obligation to help the environment? Does that mean I'm paying it, and you, and everybody else?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was always going to be that way. Think about it. Who else was going to pay?
I know,
if they did it as a tax, you'd be paying.
Yeah, it's an extra tax, so that means I'm paying 3% on top of the 5% VAT, aren't I?
Well, it's not a tax. I think the way they're operating it is the government have said to the electricity companies that you must spend an amount of money on environmental matters, because let's face it, the electricity companies, what with their transmission lines and their power stations and all the rest of it, make a mess of the countryside. And, of course, the burning of the electricity, the burning of all fuels, the burning of all these fossil fuels also contributes to the global warming that everybody believes is happening, or nearly everybody, believes they contribute to that. So the government put a not a levy, but put a responsibility on the energy salespeople to spend some of their money on environmental matters, and that's what they're doing.
You never heard of what they're doing with it, though, do you?
Well, you do from time to time. You do. I mean, one of the things we hear of is that they I mean, most, can't speak of all, but most electricity companies give everybody half a dozen energy-saving light bulbs. Well, they don't come free. They've got to come from somewhere.
So we're paying for them anyway, aren't we?
Well, you pay. You know, the truth is, we pay for everything, isn't it? You know, there ain't nobody inventing stuff. Exactly. So we're paying for it anyway. We know that. Yeah. But what they're doing is that I suppose they're showing you in the presentation of their bill that they actually spend more on the environment than they get in profit.
They do, you're right, yeah.
That's what they're saying to you. So they get 2% profit. Now, OK, if you're a £1 billion turnover company, and they're a lot bigger than that, if you're a £1 billion turnover company, 2% profit's not a bad shtick, is it? You know,
no, so they're getting more than
well, but they're only getting 2%.
Yeah.
It's not a big profit, 2%. You imagine, 2%, you imagine you get your figures wrong by a couple of percentage points and your profit's gone.
And the government is getting 8%.
Yeah, the government's getting 8.
God and Bennett.
Well, no, the government's getting 5.
Well, 5% VAT and 3%...
Well, 3% is... they could, if they want...
They don't tell us they're doing that, do they? You know what I mean? Well, you don't see it.
Well, again, it's
not...
It's not... Well, you see it in other ways. For example, loft insulation and all that gubbins. There are all sorts of programmes which are delivering... what we might call environmental matters.
I had to pay for mine.
Well, yeah. Like I say, I've never found a world where you didn't. Good on you, Anthony.
Right, thanks.
Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
So there you are. 2%, that's all the electricity company makes in profit. 2%. It's not a lot, is it? I mean, a business making just 2% profit in other circumstances would be regarded as a fairly precarious business. Kevin says the world is aghast at the crimes of Josef Fritzl. Crimes committed against one person over a period of many years. Taken from a BBC website today is the following. The number of new claims of sexual abuse made against United States Roman Catholic priests rose by 16% to more than 800 last year. A church report says the church paid out 313 million quid in 2008 for abuse cases. Most of the money was used to compensate victims. It found that more than 1 in 5 victims were under the age of 10 when they were abused. So in just one country, there were 800 crimes committed by priests in a single year, and more than 160 of these were against children under the age of 10. There was no mention of any criminal proceedings against anybody. And then he says, God certainly does work in mysterious ways. Well, obviously I'm not going to get involved in where God's responsibility lies for the behaviour of man, really. Mick says, talking about health and safety, hard hats, you know, not crash helmets, but hard hats, became compulsory on building sites in the 80s. And you see the big signs now, don't they? They say, no ear defenders, no hat, no boots, no job. There are big signs outside most of the building sites, certainly the big ones. You know, like the one, if you go and have a look at where they're building the new BBC Media City palaver over by the Lowry Centre, you're going to have a look there. There are signs on all the gateposts that say, no hard hat, no boots, no ear defenders, no job. In other words, you turn up in the morning without them, you don't work there that day, and possibly don't work there again. 0161 228 2255. Dear Alan, I can go one better than owning a police whistle. I own my grandfather's Great War trench whistle. Wow! It's made of brass, manufactured by J. Hudson of Birmingham in 1916. I also have his trench periscope. Whoa, isn't that fantastic? My grandfather was wounded but recovered and went on to serve as colonel in the Second World War. And no, I'm not blowing it down the telephone for you because I'm not a total pillock. That's fair enough, Tarlis. I can't say I blame you for that. But isn't that fabulous? Fabulous. They used to have, didn't they, in the First World War, to warn fellow combatants, as it were, to warn them of gas. You know the football rattle? You know that thing? You don't see them anymore. But they used to warn of gas with a football rattle. They used to... When you heard that, that was get your gas mask on as sharp as you could. Not that it did you any good. Turns out they weren't that clever. But there you go. 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. Text number 07786 206 951. What have you got to say for yourself today? 20 to 1 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Anna Dawson.
Josef Fritzl's told a court in Austria he's sorry from the bottom of his heart for holding his daughter captive for 24 years and repeatedly raping her, fathering 7 children. Despite his admission of guilt, the jury has retired to consider a verdict. The group that owns Manchester Airport could be a step closer to buying Gatwick. The Competition Commission's told BAA, the company that owns Gatwick and Stansted, to sell them both, as well as either Edinburgh or Glasgow Airport. And there's calls for ski helmets to be made mandatory following the death of the British actress Natasha Richardson. She died 2 days after walking away from a fall on the slopes in Canada. Manchester's weather bright and dry, highs of 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Let's take a look firstly to traffic cameras on the M60. It's all moving quite well. No major problems on the 67 or the M61. Let's now look then to roadworks in the Warrington area. I'm afraid we still have bridge maintenance underway underneath the bridge next to Bank Park, so that does tend to cause long delays on the diversion. If you're travelling through Ancoats, Pollard Street between Malta Street and Every Street still closed as well, with diversion signed whilst water maintenance work continues. But don't forget, if you have any updates for me, it's 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester, Sports with Mark Elliott.
Football in a moment, but first athletics, and British sprinters Mark Lewis Francis and Simeon Williamson will line up alongside world record holder Usain Bolt in the street sprint event in Manchester in May. The 150-metre race will be part of the Great City Games, which include the Manchester 10-kilometre run. But Dwayne Chambers won't be in the sprint. Organisers say the event is looking ahead to the London Olympics, and as an athlete who's served a drugs ban, Chambers can't compete at the Olympics. Well, Manchester City will be looking to knock out Danish opposition for the 3rd time in this season's UEFA Cup tonight as they take on Aalborg for a place in the quarter-finals. They're 2-0 up from the home leg, of course. Our City reporter Ian Cheeseman is in Aalborg.
Craig Bellamy has stayed in Manchester, hoping to be fit for Sunday's visit of Sunderland, but Vincent Kompany trained here last night. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the bench, with the team unchanged from the weekend. It is, of course, only 4 weeks since City were in Copenhagen, where temperatures were below freezing, and there was falling snow during the game. But even though we're further north here in Aalborg, it's sunny and about 15 degrees warmer. Well, manager Mark Hughes says the pitch at the Energy Nord Arena is very different to the one that they played in the Danish capital in the last round.
Very similar to an English Football League ground, I would suggest, and just looking from afar, it looks like it's got plenty of covering on it, and be a nice zip to it, I'm sure, so that will suit our passing game, so yeah, there's no problems with the actual venue itself.
The Aalborg coach, Magnus Persson, knows it'll be tough to make up the deficit without conceding more goals, though he says he hasn't singled out one danger player in the City side.
It's hard to mention one player because I feel that they have a very good, especially attacking players with Robinho and Sean Wright-Phillips in Ireland and so on. So we have to close the field down, really. We can't only focus on one player, I would say.
City, of course, already have a 2-0 lead in this game, so they know they don't actually have to win tonight to progress to the quarter-finals. Find out how they do with full match commentary and the build-up starting at 20 minutes to 8 this evening from myself and Fred Eyre, who'll be watching the game back in Manchester. This is Ian Cheeseman for BBC Radio Manchester in Aalborg.
Well, back home, the Bolton manager Gary Megson has told BBC Radio Manchester that setting a points target to avoid relegation from the Premier League this season would be nothing more than guesswork. Bolton are currently 7 points short of the traditional benchmark for survival, but Megson is having none of it.
How anybody can confidently say that 40 is going to be enough, I don't know, and nobody else does, and it makes me smirk a little bit when everybody's saying, oh, it'll be this amount of points. They won't know, because once we played Aston Villa last year, would have said, well, that's Bolton gone, and yet we then took 11 points out of the 15 and managed to stay up.
Into League One, Oldham Athletic are expected to give debuts to 2 new on-loan signings this weekend. The Ipswich goalkeeper Shane Supple and Cheltenham midfielder Ian Westlake have both been signed by Joe Royle until the end of the season.
I brought two players in I know very well. Two players I gave the debut at Ipswich. Young Shane Supple, who's a Republic under-21 goalkeeping international. And speaking with the staff and looking at the players I know here, that I felt we needed running power and energy in midfield, and Westlake certainly has that.
On to Rugby League, the Warrington captain Adrian Morley's admitted his team is hurting after the poor start to the Super League season. The Wolves suffered a humiliating defeat at the weekend to Harlequins, which was their 5th successive loss this season.
There was plenty of problems. We've addressed where we feel we can go right, what we can do more of, and we've just got to keep taking little steps. I mean, it's going to be a long process to get back to where we want to be, but there's nothing what a win won't do for the morale.
Well, the Wigan Warriors Chief Executive Mick Hogan and owner Ian Lenigan are the studio guests on Rugby League Extra tonight on BBC Radio Manchester from 6 o'clock. There'll also be interviews with the Salford coach Sean McRae and newly reinstated captain Malcolm Alker, plus a full preview of the weekend's action. On to cricket, Alex Stewart's hit out at the first-class counties who've hired Australian cricketers in the run-up to the Ashes. Phil Hughes will play for Middlesex, while Stuart Clark is going to Kent. And the former England captain says he wants a change to the rules.
I just think it's wrong that we are giving Australia a helping hand in trying to retain the Ashes. It's tough enough anyway playing against them, but why we're giving them match practice and proving their fitness in our own domestic game is beyond me. And I'd like to see a rule brought in by the ECB which states that overseas players cannot play in our country if their side is touring that summer.
Paul Collingwood and Noah Shah say they're waiting for further information from their franchise, the Delhi Daredevils, and the ECB over whether it's safe to play in Ahmedabad. The city's been included on a revised schedule put forward by the Indian Premier League. And finally for now, tennis, and Andy Murray will play Ivan Lubicic in the quarter-finals of the Masters 1000 tournament in Indian Wells later today.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
It's City going for a place in the UEFA Cup quarter-finals. The build-up and full match commentary from the game at Aalborg follows Rugby League Extra at 7:40.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hi, how are you doing? You all right? Good-o. 0161228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk, and the text number is 07786206951. Sid in Bury. Hiya, Sid.
Hiya.
What can we do for you, mate?
Well, I just heard that you said there was only 500 of us left, and I happen to be one of those 500.
Right, well, can you name the other 499?
No.
It may be more. I was just quoting
I would think so.
Yeah.
Alan. It is Alan.
It is.
Yeah, Alan, I would think so. I would just make a suggestion, though, seeing that I don't think we're going to get door-to-door transport for the 65th anniversary. I had the misfortune of going over there on the 50th, a week before they dished out the medals.
Yeah.
But what I did do, and I'm going to suggest to you, what we did get, we got a decent bottle of Calvados, compliments of the French ferry people.
Well, that's not bad, is it?
No. It was duly done up in a very nice carton and all the rest of it. And I would think if the government could afford that for the other few that's left, I think we might say, all right, well, we'll drink everybody's health. But
well, it seems rather less than one can be entitled to expect. What the government's position is, look, we did the 50th. They did say at the time that this will probably the last big one, as it were, and the next one they'll do with the 100th. And no disrespect to you, you won't be there, Sid. Fair chance I won't be either.
No,
you know.
I don't think there'll be many at all left of anything then. Another 35 years' time, the way things are going.
I can understand you wanting to mark the occasion, because you've got to go through all those emotions of why did I survive when the bloke stood next to me didn't.
Absolutely.
And all of that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've talked to my dad about that.
Yeah.
The question that I suppose has to be asked is, why should I give a damn? I'm not saying I don't, but why should I give a damn? It's over. I wasn't born.
No.
Why should I give a damn?
Yes, well, that's a general attitude, or would become a general attitude if we tend to forget these things.
But isn't the very essence of what you were fighting for the one thing that makes us want to say, well, you know, they did it for the freedom. I'm free. I'm not only free to speak my mind, I'm free to not go maudling on about it.
Well, yes, I quite agree. But the big problem, of course, is that, and it does annoy me when I've been over to Bayer and looked at all them crosses, and I think, what was it all for?
Mm.
And at 90 years of age now, there's not a lot to say. What was it all for?
No, but of course we've forgotten what was going on at the time. That's the nature of human beings.
Well,
isn't
that's it. Yes, yes. Well, that's what people mustn't forget. How we got there.
And I've got to tell you, I have visited France a good few times.
Yeah.
Usually, in the old days at least, went by ferry, and on one occasion got off the ferry and drove through that part of Normandy.
Yeah.
And I am not. Many people will tell you I don't wear my heart on my sleeve by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But just driving through that land and looking right and left and seeing white crosses going into the distance of all nations, of all the nations that were there, you know, the Americans, the British, the Canadians, the Germans even, the French.
Yeah.
And just looking at those crosses, I've got to tell you, I had a lump in my throat.
No.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. You can't you can't explain the situation. Nobody can tell me that they can explain the morning of D-Day. I landed at 7:30 on the first tide, and it was complete chaos. Well, I wouldn't wish anyone to go through that, but nevertheless, we survived. 500 of us. 500 bottles of Calvados.
I mean, you say you landed in the first wave, and that's got to be the hardest of all, because for all the intelligence that's knocking about, my dad was at Arnhem, he knows how reliable the intelligence is. They said to be a few old men with pickstaffs, and it turns out there was a Panzer division which kind of changed it. So my dad knows about intelligence. You didn't know what you were facing.
No.
You were going to jump off the front of that landing craft.
That's exactly, yes. Yes.
What was that like?
Well, it wasn't pleasant at all, especially seeing that the kedge anchor had been broken off and we had to drift in. And we had a young naval officer who was just as frightened as what we were.
Well,
but eventually we landed, but I lost 4 because they jumped in a shell hole, and then we eventually got up onto the beach. There was a beach master there. He said, "Things are not going according to plan, Sergeant Major." He said, "Get your men in this sand dune." And that's where we were for 24 hours.
24 hours? And not... I mean, it sounds like...
We couldn't move.
Yeah, you couldn't move because if you did, you'd be shot.
Well, that was it. The worst bite was just plonking 16 inches over, and everybody's seen that house that they were trying to blow down, haven't you?
Yeah. The film, The Longest Day covered it originally, but then there was the other one, oh dear, I forgot what it was called now, but the one that showed the real sort of bloodthirsty horror of the D-Day landing, Saving Private Ryan.
That's right.
I mean, did you see that film?
I didn't know, because I tend, quite honestly, Alan, to not to get back there any more than I have to, or go back into it any more than I have to. I've one or two situations that I don't like remembering.
Sounds fair to me.
Yeah.
But you settle for a bottle of Calvados.
Yes.
You're easily pleased.
With the compliments of French ferries.
Well, that was fabulous. I mean, how jolly good of him. But it does point up, doesn't it? The French ferries, I don't know what the British ferries did, probably Sweet FA, and the British government's doing nothing. Do you think the British government should pay for you lads and...
Well, I wouldn't say... You know, they issued a special medal for the 50 years.
They did?
Yeah. Well, I went over a week before. My son was in a position to take me over a week before. And he said, "I think that would be a good idea." He said, "Because things will be a bit chaos next week." And so if we go over before, and we went to Bayer, and we also went into the museum at Caen. And I said, "I believe there's a medal being given for the 50th. They said, "Oh, yes. They will be given next week. We can't give anything before." And I never got it.
You never got it?
No.
They're miserable beggars, aren't they?
I thought they might have sent me one, and I've wrote to British Legion and God knows what, but I've never got it. But it doesn't matter. I got 1 or 2 more.
Well, it sounds scandalous, does that?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
you've not got your 50th anniversary medal. That's an outrage and a scandal.
As I say, I've written to the British Legion, never got any respond, because the British Legion headquarters is virtually at Blackpool now, you know.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you stay on the line, I'll get our producer, Justin, to have a word with you.
Yeah.
And maybe we can rattle their cage.
Well,
I can't get you the Calvados, but we might be able to get you the medal. And if we do get the Calvados, just remember who your friends are.
I certainly will. You get a lot of friends then, don't you?
Oh, God, yes. It's almost as good as getting a skip.
Absolutely.
You get a skip, everybody's your pal. Sid, have a good day, mate. Stay on the line. Justin, I'll get your details and military number, and we'll chase that to see whether we can get it, because it seems to me you took the trouble to, well, nearly get killed for us. Least we can do is make a couple of phone calls and rattle the odd cage. 0161 228 2255. He's not asking a lot, is he? He's not asking a lot. He just wants the medal that they struck to remember 50 years. Or did you have to be there? What about all the guys back in the UK who couldn't be there at that time? Maybe, did you get your medal? I appreciate there can't be many survivors of the Second World War and actual D-Day around presently because of the nature of humanity. But were you there? Did you get your medal? Did you get your 50th anniversary medal? Why's Sid been left out? Or was it one of those you had to actually be on the beach on the day of the 50th anniversary to get your medal? In which case, strikes me as, well, rules for nout.
We're losing time. Now is your time. Push hard now to get a gap.
Let's see if we can get him overtaken.
We've got company.
Very tight, we need everything you got.
Push hard now to catch up with the front of the field. Come on, lose him.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Formula One, the world's greatest car chase, starts on the 29th of March, live across the BBC.
That is a fantastic advert, isn't it? I love it. And that bloke at the end, bravo, bravo, bravo. What they're doing letting Germans take part, I don't know. Anyway, wasn't that brilliant? I love it. If I said it the other day, I would be tempted to watch the whole palaver of the men driving expensive cars round in circles. I don't sell it well. I'd be prepared to watch that if they let us hear all that commentary, all the teams talking to their drivers and everything. I would. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Mind you, being a driver and having them witter at you all the time can't be good, can it? You know, Aaron in Accrington says, there's a whole health and safety industry being created to put you and me off doing anything. The ski death is tragic. But let's be human and take some risks now and again. That's it, isn't it? I mean, the poor unfortunate woman, Natasha Richardson, is there having a skiing lesson on the nursery slopes. She falls over. It comes with the territory, falling over on the ski slopes, particularly if you're a learner. She falls over, bangs her head. Gets up, makes a few jokes, like you do, because you feel so embarrassed and stupid. You make a few jokes, and then you say, well, I'm off now. I better go at that. I've done all I'm doing today. An hour later, you got a blinding headache, and a few hours later, you're dead. And yes, it is absolutely tragic for all his wealth, for all his talent. I wouldn't stand in Liam Nielsen's shoes right now. I just wouldn't, because he's going through hell. And it's two kids without a mother. I know. He's famous, got to do it in public spotlight, but it's up and down every street. But surely the most important thing for us to remember, apart from the humanity of it, is that on that ski slope that day, another 300 people fell and banged their head. And they're not dead. They're back at work. They had fun. Let us not say one person, or how many people die on the ski slopes a year who would not have died had they been wearing a helmet? The answer is, I would guess, a small number. Shouldn't we be free to make our own mind about how much stupidity we take on board?
Join me, Becky Want, today with the latest looks for your garden and the best new movies from 2 on BBC Radio Manchester.
Well, Terry Early said if that Watchman's on it, he thinks it's rubbish. But of course you may love it, who can say? 0161 228 2255. Good morning, or good lunchtime. Hello!
95.1 FM,
DAB Digital Radio.
and the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, Josef Fritzl says he's sorry from the bottom of his heart for keeping his daughter captive for nearly 25 years. And another victim of the downturn, this time the motor show's cancelled.
There's top British competition for Usain Bolt on the streets of Manchester.
Well, this afternoon looks beautiful, dry with some nice spells of sunshine, light winds and top temperatures of 16 Celsius.
And water maintenance work still underway in Standish on Preston Road, the A49 restricted at the junction with Kenyon Road.
Good afternoon, I'm Anna Dawson. Josef Fritzl's told a court in Austria he's sorry from the bottom of his heart for holding his daughter captive for 24 years and fathering 7 children with her. As well as rape and enslavement, Fritzl's accused of murder by neglect because he refused to allow the youngest child to receive medical treatment. The jury's now considering its verdict. Bethany Bell's been in court in St Pelton.
The state prosecutor said Josef Fritzl should receive a life sentence. She said he knew the baby who died in the cellar was in danger of dying, but he didn't get help. For the defence, Rudolf Meyer disputed the murder charge. He said Fritzl's guilty plea had been made in an emotional state after hearing his daughter's testimony. And he confirmed that she had been in court watching proceedings earlier this week. Josef Fritzl himself said he couldn't make it better, but he wanted to limit the damage as much as possible.
The group that runs Manchester Airport is refusing to confirm whether it intends to try and buy Gatwick. Today, the Competition Commission told BAA, the company which owns Gatwick and Stansted, to sell both sites as well as either Edinburgh or Glasgow Airport. It says it's because it'll offer more choice to passengers and airlines. Manchester Airport spokesman John Greenway says if Manchester was in the running, customer choice would be one of its priorities.
That's something that we take great pride in here at our airport group across all 4 airports that we operate. We've always invested in the passenger experience, and that's something that comes back to us in our feedback. Passengers find our airports very easy to use and that they like using them, and that's just something that if we were successful in any acquisition that we would like to transplant into another airport.
The North West is to get £3.5 million from the government to help ease the pressure on services caused by migrants and students from outside Europe. The money will come from charging an extra £50 for a UK visa and will pay for more teachers, police and translators. Directors, critics and fellow actors have joined family and friends in paying tribute to the British actress Natasha Richardson, who's died following a skiing accident. Her fall on a nursery slope has led to calls for ski helmets to be made mandatory, but the former Olympic downhill skier Graham Bell doubts that wearing a helmet while skiing would necessarily make the sport safer.
I chose not to wear a helmet because I feel safer actually not wearing one, because I'm not at risk, and I don't want to boast it, but I'm not at risk from falling over on a blue or a green run. The thing that I'm at risk at is from someone colliding with me from behind. I find that not wearing a helmet, I have better hearing and I can hear what's going to come.
Now, are you sick of getting stuck in traffic on the M60? Well, things look set to improve as plans to widen the anti-clockwise carriageway between Swinton and Eccles go on show today. Manuel Salate is from the Highways Agency and says it should ease the congestion caused by traffic filtering in from the M61.
The M61 has got quite a lot of traffic, and this is why we need that lane back when you come from the M61 and you want to go south towards the Trafford Centre, and you'll have this dedicated lane that will go up to just after junction 12.
And next year's British International Motor Show has been cancelled because of the recession. The organisers say the economic downturn's made it impossible for exhibitors to commit to an event in 2010.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Mark Elliott.
British sprinters Mark Lewis Francis and Simeon Williamson will line up alongside world record holder Usain Bolt in the street sprint event in Manchester in May. The 150-metre race will be part of the Great City Games, which include the Manchester 10-kilometre run. But Dwayne Chambers hasn't been invited. Organisers say the event's looking ahead to the London Olympics, and as an athlete who served a drugs ban, Chambers can't compete. Oldham Athletic are expected to give debuts to two new on-loan signings this weekend. Ipswich goalkeeper Shane Supple and Cheltenham midfielder Ian Westlake have both been signed by Joe Royle until the end of the season, and they should play against Tranmere. The Aalborg coach Morgan Persson says his side is capable of turning round a 2-goal deficit and knocking Manchester City out of the UEFA Cup. City are in Denmark for the away leg of their last 16 tie, trying to get into the quarter-finals. You can hear the build-up and commentary with Ian Cheeseman from 7:40 tonight. That's after Rugby League Extra. The draws for the UEFA Cup and the Champions League quarter-finals and beyond takes place tomorrow in Switzerland. And Alex Stewart's criticised the counties who've hired Australian cricketers in the run-up to the Ashes. The former England captain says it gives the Aussies an advantage and rules should be changed so overseas players can't play county cricket if their country's touring that summer.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, this afternoon looks beautiful, dry with some nice spells of sunshine, light winds and top temperatures of 16 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
You'll like this story. Well, I did. A Sri Lankan-born man who came to Britain 17 years ago is refusing to serve customers in his post office unless they speak English. Diva Sumarasire, whose shop is in a racially mixed area of Nottingham, believes he has to stand up for the English language because otherwise the social fabric of the country will disintegrate. He says he's also providing a good service to customers. What I would say, this is him, what I would say is if that I can't understand what they're telling me, how can I serve? How can I give the best service? And if there is another 10 or 15 customers in the queue waiting to get served, what am I supposed to do? The problem now is that everybody's taking into one line saying it's Punjabi or Muslim. When I want to give the right service, I have to give the best service I could. But he says, you don't speak English, so I can understand you. I can't serve you, so I won't. What do you think of that? 0161 228 2255. And Brian says, Alan, here in Spain, the health and safety rules on building sites are most precise. No helmet, no air defenders is a no problem. Thank you for that. Yeah, well, I don't know whether their building sites are any more safe than ours as a result. My guess is probably not. I was posing the question about how safe is skiing. It's not a sport or a pastime that I've given much thought to. And fortunately, there's a story or a comparison chart in Times 2. That's the Times sort of feature supplement today. If you're a rugby player, 67,000 rugby injuries require a trip to accident and emergency in the UK every year. And studies of competitive rugby players have found that there's one injury per person for every 10 games played, or around 2 injuries per match. That rate makes rugby a more dangerous sport than boxing, mountain climbing, and even, for those feeling patriotic, American football. And listen to this. If all these statistics encourage a little risk aversion, then is it worth considering that by that logic we might as well stop being human beings? This is from the Times today, Times 2. We might as well stop being human beings, quite literally. Because there is one death in 8,200 pregnancies. Yeah. I find that figure startling also. But there is one death in every 8,200 pregnancies. So I don't know whether that's one mother death or one fetus child death. I don't know. They don't say. They quote the source and everything, but we'll go back to it. But in 8,200 confinements, one of the parties involved, mother or child, will die. Exactly. So these are the risks. And then let's look at skiing or snowboarding, which is what we've all been talking about for obvious reasons. 365 is the average number of consecutive days you would have to be skiing or snowboarding before experiencing what we call a reportable injury. If you spent the time playing rugby, then, well, the chances are that you would not still be playing by the end of the year. 2.8 injuries per 1,000 days spent skiing or snowboarding is the injury rate, and it compares badly with that of other sports. Parachutists, for instance, may be 10 times more likely to die with each jump than skiers are with each day spent on Val d'Isère. But assuming they survive, they are 2/3 less likely to be hurt. And then the figure, the one that puts it really into a cocked hat. 1 death in 1 million days skiing is the fatality rate for winter board sports. Now that's skate, these slidey boards, snowboards and skiing. But listen to this figure. 1 death in 1 million days skiing. So if you go skiing for 5 days or 7 days as your winter holiday, then off you go. You do 7 days skiing. Now, just for you, and, Natasha Richardson is evidence that it is always somebody, but just for you, your chances of being killed, that's more than injured, of course, your chances of being killed are 1, and I'm just doing some quick mathematics here, 1, 4, 4, 100, and if you have a week of skiing, your chances of dying while skiing are 144,444 to 1. But at least if you put a lottery ticket on as well, then you'll win about 100,000. So, those are the odds. 1 death in every 1 million days skiing. Why would you wear a helmet? Why would you wear a helmet? Why would you want to look such a Burke? And you just heard what our champion skier was saying. He'd rather hear what's coming, thank you very much.
This is the Northwest's biggest sports station.
BBC Radio Manchester.
The road to Istanbul continues tonight. Manchester City take a 2-0 lead into the second leg of their last 16 UEFA Cup tie against Aalborg.
Great goal by Felipe Caicedo, and he's got in! Shaw Wright Phillips with a super shot!
There's full match commentary from Denmark after Rugby League Extra.
Manchester Sports, tonight from 6. BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. Hi, Alan, says Keith. I was listening to your programme during my lunch break today and was interested to hear the gentleman talking about the medal associated with the 50th anniversary of the D-Day landings. My father, who I'm glad to say is still with us, is also a veteran of this campaign, and he didn't get a medal either, nor was he informed that such a medal was indeed struck. So I'd be interested in what your researcher can find out. Well, can anyone help us, first of all? Did you get one such medal? And if you did, what was it for? I don't mean a medal of valor, a voluntary medal and all of that. I don't mean that. What was the medal for? Was it that you had to be on the beach on the 50th anniversary of D-Day to get the medal, which seems a bit harsh for those who were not well enough to travel at that time, or indeed were busy working, running a company or what have you. So that seems a bit harsh. But is that what the medal was for? You tell me if you know. 0161 228 2255 if you want to do that. On another point, says Keith, of personal interest, my father was awarded the military medal at some stage of the war, but we have no idea what he did to warrant this award. Could you let me know who I have to contact to find out the details? My dad's now 89 and in poor health and either cannot or doesn't want to remember what happened. I know how you find medals that you are entitled to and have not received, and in some rare cases where you can even get replacements for those medals. I don't know where you can get the details of the citation. I've no idea. Presumably, it will be held with the people who made the original citation. I don't know. If anybody does know, because loads of people around here have got medals, we're a very brave part of the world, which is why people like me can continue as a sissy, because there's other people doing all the bravery for me, which I quite like. But if you know the answer to that, where can you discover the citation of a medal issued for valour? If you know, give us a call, 0161 228 2255. Rob in Sale. Hiya, Rob.
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm not bad. What can we do for you?
We're just talking. You were talking about the numpties who wear helmets on snowboards, and when
I don't think I said numpties, but yeah, you took the words. It works. Go on.
I must admit, you do look a little strange with them on. But I like Natasha. I've forgotten her name. Was it Richardson?
Richardson, yes.
Yeah, she started late in life, and I started at 45 at the same time. And I did snowboarding, and the first time that I went out in Austria, I whacked my head. I mean, there was nobody, because you're skiing groups, all the group had disappeared. I was on my own, and I came down, whacked my head, and was virtually unconscious at the top of this hill. And then I was out of it for a couple of days afterwards, because I'd really done myself. I felt like the world had come to an end.
Yeah,
everybody was skiing around me, and I was sliding down the hill, because these hills are really steep. And I can remember being upside down, sliding down the hill, virtually unconscious, with people coming by. But the main group of people that I was with had disappeared, and I had to scrape myself off the snow and carry on skiing the rest of the 3 miles down the hill to get to the bottom, where I could sit down and finally basically collapse. But after that event, I always wear a helmet. Now, I know there are, I mean, this morning there's been arguments about wearing a helmet, whether you should or whether you shouldn't, or whether they should make it compulsory. But I think as an individual and as an adult, when you take these sports up, you always assess the amount of risk that you're actually taking before you actually start doing these things. I think, it's sad in the instances where people do go out, they do start, and then they do have an injury. But if you're doing these sports and you're doing them particularly proficiently, and you're actually flying down these slopes, the number of variables that are in front of you that you've got to try and bear in mind and try and take care of as a skier or a boarder, that they're infinite. Between avalanches, drops that suddenly you're not aware of, if the snow's melted and there's rocks in front of you, all these things suddenly appear on your horizon as you're going down these things, and you basically have to you defend yourself against these things. You can't have airbags, so you wear a helmet. If you went head first into solid rock at 30 miles an hour, it's not going to do you anything. You're going to bust your neck. But the number of times I've fallen over, and then I've looked later at my helmet, I've seen all these scratches on it, and I think to myself, well, it was worth having it on, because I've still got a scalp and I've still got some hair. But this morning there was arguments about cyclists having compulsory helmets, cycling proficiency coming back in, and all the rest of it. As I say, it's down to the individual. I haven't seen a cyclist yet that stops at a red light on a main road. They always want to weave their way through.
I don't think they're allowed to, Rob.
What?
I don't think they're allowed to stop on red lights. It's some special law they have. So it's like they're not allowed on the road either. They're only allowed on the footpath.
No, they own the road on
Indeed,
some days.
absolutely so.
Riding 2 abreast, 3 abreast is commonplace, isn't it? We don't want to cause an obstruction, but hey-ho, we're cyclists, we're out on Sunday, and we're getting fresh air. We all have our funny hats on, so that's okay. But, the note and the serious note is that you assess the risk. When you see kids and mums and dads putting kids on skis, they're always wearing helmets. You very rarely see on any slopes any little kids going down without helmets. It's always the adults who feel that they're proficient enough to be able to take the risk and deal with anything that happens to come along with as you're on those slopes. So. My thought is that you just take it as it comes, and you take the necessary precautions. If you need to wear body armour, then wear body armour, and that's really just the point that I was going to make today.
And you've made it admirably, Rob. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Cheers, Alan.
It's a matter of personal choice, he says, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about making it compulsory. But look at those statistics: 1 death in every 1,000,000 days of skiing. Now, OK, there's a lot more things that can happen to you other than death. When you knock your head, and you could be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. So there are things that... there's just been a flash. I won't tell you what it says, because I can't really read it properly, but we have information on Josef Fritzl. So that will be interesting. The head of the Dublin-based budget airline, Ryanair, Michael O'Leary, says he's serious about the suggestion he made recently about charging passengers for using on-board toilets. I'm just going to pee in the aisle. That'll teach him, won't it? When he's replaced them carpets a couple of times, he'll start thinking it wasn't. You just get up and have a pee in the aisle. Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't afford it. I've got a weak bladder. I'm 60 years of age. It's more than I can do. I can't go an hour without a whittle. So I'll just have a pee in the aisle. I'm not paying money. I'll just pee in this cup. And if it's a smooth landing, nothing will be spilled. So it's up to you. So get some bloody good pilots, Michael. Otherwise, you're going to have it smelling of ammonia. It'll serve you right. But there you are. When it was first mooted, not very long ago, it was about a month ago, there were all sorts of press officers at Ryanair backpedalling. Well, he's been beating his gums again, and he says, no, we're going to do it. You want to pee? It's a quid. A quid. Yeah. So, good luck to him. I wish him luck. And see if he feels so good when he's ankle-deep in slash. It's 1:20 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Anna Dawson.
Josef Fritzl, the Austrian man who imprisoned his daughter for more than 20 years and repeatedly raped her, has been found guilty of murdering through neglect one of the 7 children he fathered by her. The verdict carries a maximum life sentence. The jury in Austria is returning its verdicts at the moment, even though Fritzl admitted all charges yesterday. The group that runs Manchester Airport's refusing to confirm whether it intends to try and buy Gatwick. Today, the Competition Commission told BAA, the company which owns Gatwick and Stansted, to sell both sites, as well as either Edinburgh or Glasgow Airport. And next year's British International Motor Show has been cancelled because of the recession. The organisers say the economic downturns made it impossible for exhibitors to commit to an event in 2010. Manchester's weather dry and bright today, highs of 16 Celsius.
Are we going to see all the bosoms? No, that's what the motor show's for. Nobody looks at the cars. They're all looking at the ladies with their chests out. Is it just me?
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
Let's take a quick look firstly to traffic cameras in the Warrington area. Traffic not doing too bad on the diversion. Don't forget, of course, that the road under the railway bridge next to Bank Park is still closed off whilst bridge maintenance work continues. If you're travelling around the Ancoats area, Pollard Street between Malta Street and Every Street still shut again whilst water maintenance work continues in the area today. And in Golborne, the East Lancs Road, the A580 around Newton Road, down to a speed of 30 miles per hour, one lane closed off again. Roadworks in the area now until the beginning of May. But don't forget, if you can update me, it's 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester. With 2020 traffic through until midnight. BBC Radio Manchester.
Eileen in Stalybridge. Hiya, Eileen.
Hi, Alan.
What can we do for you?
Well, I've got one of the medals that...
Have you?
Yes, I have, yeah. It was, it's obviously it was from a father who was killed in Normandy.
Yeah.
He's buried at Bayeux. But I think it must have been the time there was about 5 or 6 coaches went, and a relation of mine went over after the 50 years, and they had this reunion, and he managed to get a medal and brought it back for me from my father. But he got one himself as well, so, you know, I'm just saying I do have one of these medals, not solely for the people that were actually there.
Except you got yours because somebody snaffled one whilst they were there. I don't mean that in a criminal way, but acquired one.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. What does it say on it?
It says Liberty, and then it's got sort of in the centre, it's gold-coloured, and it's got a torch in the middle, and it says Dieu, and then AIE across the centre, and underneath it says Normandy, MCM, something BIV, and on the back there's a map, and it says Overlord, 6th of June 1944.
Yeah, Overlord is the proper name of the D-Day landings. It was Operation Overlord.
And underneath that, underneath the map, it's got Utah, Omaha, you know, Sword.
All the beaches, yeah.
All the beaches, yeah. So it's not, obviously, you know, you didn't have to be there, you know, but I think, obviously, you know, I have been to see my father's grave, and it, you know, it's beautiful at the...
He's buried out there?
Yeah. And it's you can see in the book and that, his name and what have you, so maybe they needed some kind of reassurance, you know, but he brought me one back. It's lovely. It's on a ribbon that's blue striped, blue, green, yellow, orange and red, and it's in a nice little presentation box too.
I mean, I'm going to ask you a really horrible question. I'm sorry. You said your dad's grave was beautiful.
Absolutely.
What? I mean, beauty. I've seen those graves. I've not seen any particular one of them, but I've seen those graves, and they are stark. They're disturbing.
Oh, it was horrific, very, very traumatic. But to know that the cemetery, as it was, there wasn't a blade of grass out of place. It's absolutely, you know, the cemetery, not like in this country, you know, and all the flowers there are English country flowers that are in the actual cemetery. It really is, it is very traumatic, you know, and I stayed there for I was on a coach trip, and I stayed by the grave, say, about an hour and a half, and then they were getting back on the coach, but you know, I'm really pleased. My mother was never able to go, so this is one of the things when I retired, it was the first thing I did.
Fantastic. Arlene, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome.
Have a good day.
You too.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
I asked my dad once, does he ever want to go back to Arnhem, to all that went on there, and he doesn't expand on things much, but he said, nah. And I said, why not? He said, well, I didn't like it last time. Which is, I suppose, a fairly good answer. Mike in Davy Hume says, Alan, the greatest killer of teenage girls is not binge drinking or drug taking. No, not at all. It's horse riding. Or more to the point, not horse riding. Dave in Rossendale, Alan, all this fuss about skiing. How many people in the Radio Manchester area go skiing? Well, I would say thousands. I don't know, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? But I think it's thousands. I've not been, but then why would I go? You know, I'm not sure I'd enjoy it, so I've not been. But there you have it, thousands. I don't know what percentage of the population, but a big lot. Now, the full lineup of the Manchester International Festival has just been announced. And we're going to find out when it is, what it is, and all the rest of it. Richard Stead is at Manchester's Art Gallery, where the launch is taking place. Richard? Hiya. Hello, Richard.
Going on here? Oh, there we go.
There we go. What's going on here? Well, now we know what's going on. You're
just
talking
outside
to me.
the Manchester Art Gallery, Alan, yes, where the launch is quite a glitzy sort of launch, I guess, has just taken place for the 2009 Manchester International Festival. You might remember the last one 2 years ago. A commission of original new work for the city. And every show, every film, every artwork, every performance is original and new. That's the idea. It's not like other art festivals across the country, like Edinburgh, Glastonbury, the Proms, the Hay Music Festival, that kind of thing.
Well, Rufus Wainwright's hardly new.
Ah, well, he's producing new work.
Oh, right,
and
that's fair enough.
He's the highlight, you see. Basically, he's a Canadian sort of performer. He's normally used to producing that acoustic guitar-type music. And he's been commissioned by the Manchester Festival to produce an opera.
Wow.
Well, yeah, but it's one that the Metropolitan Museum Metropolitan Museum, in fact, in New York, originally commissioned him. They didn't want it because it was going to be made in French. Manchester said, that doesn't matter, we like the French, we like the French thing, it's an opera after all, most operas are in Italian. This opera is going to be in French, it's going to be at the Palace Theatre. He did a little spiel before, just telling us all about it. Very excited he was about it too. There's other things as well. You remember the 1970s electro-pop pioneers Kraftwerk?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, they were weird.
Yes,
oh,
they were.
my God, they were weird. We're not having them, are we? I couldn't understand them last time.
Now they're 30 years older weird.
But they're still going. That's
They are
amazing,
still
isn't
going,
it?
yeah.
Crying out loud.
So that's not bad. That's all going on in Manchester. There's Elbow. Do you know them? They're the berry band of the moment that you might well know. They've just won the Mercury Music Prize, all sorts of stuff at the Brit Awards. They're going to be doing a show with the Halle Orchestra at the Bridgewater Hall. So, yeah, not too bad. There's the ballet dancer, Carlos Acosta. Now, he was here last time around, performed at the Lowry. He's famous for his big lunchbox.
I have no idea what you mean. No idea what you mean.
He's a Cuban ballet dancer.
Right.
He's supposed to be the best in the world, so he's going to be performing at the Lowry.
And he brings his own maracas, apparently, yeah.
He does. Apparently, he's very good. Got a fantastic six-pack, I'm told. There's
not a lot on sea, that.
There's other things that's going on across the city. It's 2.5 weeks from the
Will there be a parade? We like
to
parades.
the 19th of July. Yes, there is a parade.
Oh,
There's
that's
a
all right.
carnival procession.
Oh, excellent.
And just to prove that art's not all highbrow and that anyone can get involved, it's going to involve people from the 10 councils of Greater Manchester, kids, all people getting involved, and creative people across the Greater Manchester region, so that they're all getting involved. But basically, you think of an arts venue in Manchester, be it the Whitworth Gallery, the Bridgewater Hall, the Manchester Art Gallery, and there's something going to be going on. Like the gallery here where we are, the Manchester Art Gallery, there's going to be a performance of works by Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, you might ask what's original about that as well.
Yeah. Been around 300 years, hasn't it?
He has. He's more of a decomposer, really, these days.
Oh, very good.
But the original aspect of that is there's an architect that's going to create this space for his work to be performed in. So it's an interesting sort of stuff. As for the funding, I hear you cry. Because there are sponsors for this. There's a target sponsorship of around £3.6 million. A few months back, they were £500,000 short. And now, we don't know the answer yet. They were keeping quite stum in the presentation. Right. I've got to go back inside and ask them about that. So you'll find out more about that on Manchester Now with Steve Saul.
Excellent. Well, we shall look forward to that at 5 o'clock. Fabulous stuff by the sound of it. And at the launch, Rufus Wainwright was there, was he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. And they made
Anyone
a big
else?
play of the fact that 30% of the events at the festival are free. Because they were criticised for that 2 years ago, that it was all a bit highbrow, it was costing people too much, and council taxpayers were underwriting the cost. It's more of a people's festival this time.
When does it
around.
start?
It starts on the 2nd of July and goes on to the 19th. And I've got to say, you'll remember it last time around, Alan. It was a real buzz around the city. The weather spoiled it last time, so hopefully the weather this time around will be fantastic, and it'll be like it is today in the centre of Manchester. There's not a cloud in the sky. There's people I can see walking around in T-shirts. Fantastic.
Good Lord. Well, I'm stuck in here, so we're not enjoying that. Right. Richard, thank you very much. Richard Stead at the launch of the Manchester International Festival, where Rufus Wainwright will be the centre, but there's also a huge parade and even a bingo show. I should have got time to ask him about that. Probably scares me a little bit. And craft work and an opera, a newly commissioned opera by Rufus Wainwright, commissioned by the New York Metro. Yeah, and that's not a train station. Oh, the New York Metropolitan Opera. I went there when I was in New York. Well, you can't go at any other time. You have to be in New York. Sounds fun. All starts in July. It should be absolutely fantastic. The city's alive with the sound of music. All right, I understand.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Yeah, very good day. We do all right out of that sort of, what would you call it, street entertainment, don't we? You know, we have the Arts Festival, we have the Comedy Festival, we have all sorts of festivals. We have Irish Day, we have Italian Day. It's belting, isn't it? It is. Absolutely fantastic. And then we have Bonfire Night. New Year's Eve's always a cracker. I'm always somewhere else. Mark in North Manchester says, over the past few seasons, there's been a move to introduce more of the radio communication between the pit wall and the cars while they're racing. I feel sure there'll be a lot more pit-to-car communication broadcast this season. From memory, the only team that refuses the broadcasters access to this communication is the Ferrari team, which he says tells its own story. I am over the moon, says Mark, that the BBC has landed the coverage of the Formula One, as I feel the BBC always provided the best coverage of sporting events. We like him. You should try the Formula One coverage for the upcoming season. Well, I would have done if you hadn't have said upcoming. Never mind. For the Formula 1 season, for the upcoming season. If only because it's returned home to the BBC. Well, the other thing that's returned home to the BBC is the boat race. Yeah. Is that next Sunday or the Sunday after? Can't remember now. Why does anyone give a fig about the boat race? It's hard to know. Yeah. No idea. Why does anyone give a monkey's cuss about the boat race? And it's a week on Sunday, according to Stuart, unless our communication lines have crossed, which they could so very easily have done, because they have done before, and I'm the one that ends up looking like a lemon. And how is that wrong, I hear you ask? Hey-ho. Oh, but no car show. That's terrible, isn't it? Yeah. What's Mark Edwardson going to do for his holidays if there's no car show? How's he going to get... No, he's barmy. Well, he's barmy anyway, but he's barmy about cars. Daily Express, 2 million unemployed, but migrants still queue to reach what the Daily Express calls Benefit Britain. So there you go. Yes. Stuart says the boat race. It's the same two teams in the final every year. How do they manage that? Right, well, I think we've heard enough of that. But it's quite exciting, isn't it, the boat race? Yeah. It used to be the Grand National, the boat race, and the Liverpool Derby, all on the same weekend. It did. Liverpool Derby being Liverpool versus Everton. I don't know whether they can do that now because they're all done by computer, aren't they? But it used to be that the Liverpool-Everton Derby took place the same weekend as the Grand National and the boat race. I don't know why. I don't even know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the way it was. A tradition. The sort of... yeah, the bits of the season. Because the Grand National makes it into the season. What do you mean you don't know what the season is? Oh, it's very posh, the season. Oh, God, yes. That's it. If you're really, 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 really rich, and you don't really do a day's work, or you run a bank. Anyway, if you're that rich, then you take part in what's called the season. And it's like the boat race, and the Grand National, possibly the Derby, can't remember, and all that, you know, down at Cowes, which has got nothing to do with cattle at all, surprisingly, but Cowes, all that moving boats about and everything. Duke of Edinburgh there, laughing his head off and getting wet. Yeah, and that. I can't think of the other thing. What are the other things in a season? There's a formal season. It's never really troubled me till now. I've never really had to think of it until now. What is the season? But it's not the season to be jolly. That's an entirely different bit. We've had this before, but Sarah's sent it to us, so we'll have it again. Why not? There we go. Oh, my computer had a funny moment. Today, says Sarah, we mourn the passing of a beloved old friend, Common Sense, who's been with us for many years. No one knows for sure how old he was, since his birth records were lost long ago in bureaucratic red tape. He'll be remembered as having cultivated such valuable lessons as knowing when to come in out of the rain, why the early bird gets the worm. Life isn't always fair, and maybe it was my fault. Common Sense lived by simple, sound financial policies. Don't spend more than you earn. And reliable parenting strategies. Adults, not children, are in charge. His health began to deteriorate rapidly when well-intentioned but overbearing regulations were set in place. Reports of a 6-year-old boy charged with sexual harassment for kissing a classmate. Teens suspended from school for using mouthwash after lunch. And a teacher fired for reprimanding an unruly student. This only worsened Common Sense's condition. Common Sense lost ground when parents attacked teachers for doing the job they themselves failed to do in disciplining their unruly children. Common Sense finally gave up the will to live after a woman failed to realise that a steaming cup of coffee was hot. She spilled a little in her lap and was promptly awarded a huge settlement. Common Sense was preceded in death by his parents, truth and trust, his wife, discretion, his daughter, responsibility, and his son, reason. He's survived by 3 stepbrothers. I know my rights, Someone else is to blame, and I'm a victim. Not many attended his funeral because so few realised he was gone. If you still remember him, pass it on. If not, join the majority and do nothing. Fabulous. Well, we've not had that for ages, and I like it. I like it because it is so, what should we say, so very nearly true. Sean Hodgson, Barry George, Stefan Kishko, apart from being wrongly convicted, all appear to have learning difficulties. I wonder how many of the coppers who got it wrong gained promotion after their successful convictions. Is that what you're suggesting, that the coppers thought, well, just find somebody a bit dim and force him into a confession? I don't think it was quite that bad, was it? Maybe it was. 20 to 2 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Michelle Adamson.
Josef Fritzl has been sentenced to life imprisonment and internment in a psychiatric hospital for locking up and raping his daughter in a cellar over 24 years, fathering 7 children with her and causing the death of an infant son. A man from Bolton's gone on trial, accused of killing his sister in a violent knife attack in her own home. Sarah Amelia's body was found by her daughter. Her brother Mark Kitchen is accused of murder. Next year's British International Motor Show has been cancelled due to the recession. The organisers say the economic downturn had made it impossible for exhibitors to commit to an event in 2010. And Manchester's weather, dry and bright this afternoon with highs of 16 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Let's take a quick look firstly to traffic in the Ancoats area. Moving quite well despite restrictions on Pollard Street between Malta Street and Every Street. If you're travelling through Dobcross in Oldham, Dobcross New Road near to Wall Road has temporary traffic lights in operation at that junction whilst emergency repairs take place around the Brownhill Canal Bridge area. No major issues on public transport, but if you can update me, of course, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Hi, good afternoon. British sprinters Mark Lewis Francis and Simeon Williamson will line up alongside world record holder Usain Bolt in the street sprint event in Manchester in May. The 150-metre race will be part of the Great City Games, which include the Manchester 10K run. But Dwayne Chambers won't be in the sprint. Organisers say the event is looking ahead to the London Olympics, and as an athlete who served a drugs ban, Chambers can't compete there. Keeping a clean sheet is the aim for Manchester City tonight, according to manager Mark Hughes. The Blues take on Aalborg for a place in the quarter-finals of the UEFA Cup and have a 2-0 lead going into the game in Denmark.
We were in a strong position, obviously, with 2 goals to the good and no away goals conceded, so we have to make sure that obviously we don't encourage Aalborg very early on in the game and allow them to obviously get back into the game with an early goal. If we can avoid conceding early on, we can capitalise on that.
Well, the Aalborg coach Magnus Persson accepts it's a tough task to come back from 2 goals down, but he thinks his side can do it.
Well, it's going to take a lot of courage, of course, and confidence and believe in what we will do, but I think we have that, and we will certainly go for it. That's all we can do. I mean, focus on our tasks and so on.
Well, there's build-up and full match commentary from 7:40 tonight on BBC Radio Manchester. Oldham's latest signings are hoping they can help the Latics into the League One playoffs. Manager Joe Royle has secured the services of Cheltenham midfielder Ian Westlake and Ipswich goalkeeper Shane Supple until the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm hoping to just come in and do well for the club, play well, get them into the playoffs. You never know what could happen from there, and as you say, I'm out of contract, so we'll see what happens come the end of the season.
Surprised and pleased. Obviously, when the gaffer got a job, I had no idea that I would get the chance to come and play for him again. I enjoyed it when I did, and hopefully I'll enjoy it again. And last time I was with him, we went to 2 playoff seasons, so hopefully that's a good omen.
Ian Westlake, before that Shane Supple. Despite doubts over his long-term fitness, Stockport's goalkeeper Owen Vaughan-Williams will play against Northampton on Saturday. Johnny Mullins, though, is definitely out with a foot injury. Hull manager Phil Brown has been fined £2,500 and warned as to future conduct by the Football Association after admitting a charge of improper conduct. Both Brown and Newcastle manager Joe Kennedy Kinnear were involved in a touchline row during the FA Cup match at St James's Park on the 14th of January. It's over a week since Manchester United booked their place in the quarter-finals of the Champions League, and tomorrow they'll finally discover their opponents when the draw takes place in Switzerland, with Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool also still involved. United's Nemanja Vidic knows there's a good chance the Reds will draw familiar opposition.
We have a big chance to play against English teams, but any team we play in the next round, it will be difficult, because now it's the top teams. Small things are going to decide who's going to go to the next round, and we know that any team we play, we need to give our best.
We'll, of course, notify you straight away tomorrow morning once that draw has been made. Paul Collingwood and OS Shah say they're waiting for further information from their franchise, the Delhi Daredevils, and the ECB over whether it's safe to play in Ahmedabad. The city was included on a revised schedule but put forward by the Indian Premier League. Alex Stewart, meanwhile, has hit out at the first-class counties who've hired Australian cricketers in the run-up to this year's Ashes. Phil Hughes will play for Middlesex, while Stuart Clark is going to Kent, and the former England captain wants the rules changed.
I just think it's wrong that we are giving Australia a helping hand in trying to retain the Ashes. It's tough enough anyway playing against them, but why are we giving them match practice and proving their fitness in our own domestic game is beyond me. And I'd like to see a rule brought in by the ECB which states that overseas players cannot play in our country if their side is touring that summer.
Finally, the Wigan Warriors chief executive Mick Hogan and owner Ian Lenigan are the studio guests on Rugby League Extra tonight from 6. You can also hear from the Salford coach Sean McRae and captain Malcolm Alker.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
And straight after Rugby League Extra 20-8, you can hear the build-up and full match commentary as City aim to progress into the quarter-finals of the UEFA Cup.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Steve in Northwich says, Alan, them boat race crews are mostly bloody Yanks. Well, it's better than them being all toffs, isn't it? They all used to be toffs. I say, pull up the bollard, what? And all that stuff. I don't even know the language. Even the bloke, you know, they get the little skinny one. They sometimes let women do it now. Where they get the little skinny one at the back, sat there, getting a free ride. In, out, in, out. I'd be tempted, wouldn't you? In, out, in, shake it all about. That'll sort them. Dear God. And how come when they're neck and neck, or pointy bit and pointy bit, because they don't have necks, do they? I mean, the rowers do, obviously, in the midget. Yeah, well, that's what it is, isn't it? It's about 10 blokes taking a midget for a ride on the river. Anyway, the pointy bit, not the neck. And when they're like that, how come the rowers don't hear the other fella shouting in? So they're going in, because he's in the boat over there, they're going in, he's going out. I mean, they've only got a megaphone. It's not like high-quality reproduction technology, is it? They've probably got that as well, but that's not what I meant. Yeah. And he got in, and the fella over there, what did he just say? Did he just say in? No, that was the other fella, it wasn't ours. Why doesn't that happen? Ludicrous. Are they not paying attention? Are they able to listen to just one thing, to cancel the rest of it out? And why did he go backwards? What's the point of that? Why go backwards? If I was in a boat, I'd want to know where I was bloody going. I hired another boat once. You stand on the night, you stand at the back, but you look forward, don't you? Perhaps that was what with the Titanic, with all Oxford, Cambridge fellas were going backwards, hit the iceberg. Well, it serves you right. You should have been looking where you were going. Why can't? Was it Oxford? Well, that's not made you very clever. It never does. Boat race, indeed. God and Bennett. Why do we give a fig? And I don't care that they're all Yanks. I'm not bothered. I don't think they are anyway. They are all students at one of the Oxford or Cambridge. Now, I have to be careful here, because I watch Mastermind. They are all students at one of the Oxford or Cambridge colleges. There again, they may have left and got a job. Who can say?
Caffeinated conversation with Heather Stott and friends.
Karting, you can actually go on to get into motorsports from that, can't you?
Great things. I'm currently doing my absolute best to give them the opportunity to be the next Lewis Hamilton.
Right. Paid off well for him,
But I've got to
hasn't it?
say, we've got some equally talented students.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Do you think could be as good?
Better.
Have you been watching Heston doing his medieval feast?
I have indeed.
What's he on?
In any given art or creative field, you need people who are pushing the envelope. If you go and look at haute couture on the catwalks, would you want to wear it every day? No. Does it filter down to the high street and become accessible? Yes.
The Coffee Club with Heather Stott and friends.
Sign me up.
Tomorrow morning from 9 on BBC Radio Manchester.
Don't try and push the envelope on a damp day. Just never try. It's murder. Well, the dampness gets on the glue, and it glues to the sideboard, and your mother hits you. And you try to push it like that, and it just rips. It's like... No, it's like... it's like trying to get a barcode off. Can't get a barcode off. What bloody glue do they use for barcodes? Why don't they put wings on planes with it? You can't get a barcode off for love nor money. It's extraordinary. What glue do they use? We bought some flags the other day to do the path. We did. We bought some flags to do the path. Dirty great big slabs of stone. We got a barcode on them. And now we've got a little rectangle of glue on stone. And it'll wear off. Once I've put them down, obviously. And we've worn over it. But, you know, you walk on it, it'll rub it off eventually. Unless it's really good glue, you could get stuck, couldn't you? That would be terrible. Alan, do those fatality figures for skiing include death by avalanche? Or are they not considered accidents? I understand, says David, that Canada alone has about half a dozen such deaths annually. Well, it might do. They might include... I don't know is the simple answer. I was merely quoting the figures from the Times supplement. Times 2. That's not Times 2, like your table. That's what it's called, Times 2. It's not helped. Anyway, no. I don't know what figures it is. I'm just telling you. But it could include them, because if there's 6 a year, well, how many million skiing days are there per year? You see, it's not a million people. But if 1 million people go skiing every year for a fortnight, that's 14 million skiing days, isn't it? In the old... I'm not a psephologist. But, yeah, I don't know whether it includes avalanches, frankly. But avalanches are acts of God. When God's had enough, and he thinks there's few people there that could be done with, then... What? How patriotic of you to put the Union Jack on your path. What have you been drinking? I never said that. Flags. Oh, very good, yes, flags. They're not all locked up yet, are they, dear God? Right, he's trying to help. He's trying, you know he is. And Robert says, please forward that email about common sense to me. No. Robert in Royton. But if you go on the internet and go on a search engine and type common sense in, I'm sure you'll get a variety of versions thereof. But I can't forward it to you because it's not mine to forward. I know that sounds daft, but it's better than going to jail. Well, I think it is. Darren asks a good question. Mr. Beswick, you see? Quality. That's how you get a bit of respect into your emails in future. Yes, thank you. Mr. Beswick, I wonder if you can help me with a little problem. I'm currently in a contract with a television, internet and phone services provider. This contract has 5 months left to run. However, I'm moving house to an area which doesn't have cable services. So I won't be able to switch my account to the new address. Am I still required to pay for the services which the company, are unable to supply? Or could I demand they supply the services or cancel the contract? Well, you can't demand they supply the services because, frankly, their contract is to supply the services at a given address. You know, Oxford Road, Manchester, whatever. So the contract you have with them is to provide the services at a given and stipulated address. The fact that you no longer will be living at that address, I suppose if we're to be pedants, would say that's not the company's problem. That's your problem. You've decided to move house. They haven't driven you out. So I suppose in those circumstances they could get on their high horse and say, look, we've agreed to supply the services to that address for a year. But frankly, if you're not there, well, it's not our fault. They could say that, I suppose. I've not read the contract, I wouldn't know. The term used in these kind of circumstances, the general quasi-legal term is the contract is frustrated. Okay? So you both, at the time of taking out the contract, intended to honour it in full. They did, and you did. But services beyond either of your realistic controls have meant that it can't be continued. And you would, had you moved to an area where they could provide that service, you would have transferred and kept the contract. So I think with a bit of negotiation, they will probably allow you to terminate the contract on the grounds that the contract is frustrated. And I suspect that if they don't do that and you tell them to shove their service up their bum, I suspect they won't sue you, because although they might on paper be entitled to, they're just going to look so blessed silly when they get to court. So it's a case of negotiation, right to them, providing, of course, you didn't intend to move house when you entered into the new contract. So that's a bit of it. But basically, I'd just say, sorry, can't help it. Had I been moving to a house, you know, where they provided this stuff, then I would have transferred. But unfortunately, you don't supply it in the area. That's none of our faults. It's just the way it is. So I'd like to be released from the contract, please. They may make a charge for that, which I think would probably be reasonable. But in the end, remember that phrase, the contract is frustrated. You're not pulling out. They're not pulling out. It's just circumstances have conspired to shaft you both, really. Give it a try anyway. I have no guarantees that it'll work, but it's worth a try. 0161 228 2255, Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk, and of course you can text 07786 206 951. Is that Jim from Wigan or him from Wigan? I don't know. No idea. Oh, right, him from Wigan. Maybe it's H-I-M. Maybe your name is Harry Ignatius Mottlebottom. I've no idea. Anyway, him from Wigan. We'll go with that. We're not bothered. Alan, is it just me who thinks a fitting term for Mr. Fritzl would be to give him a little damp room in the cellar and fed through a hatch for, let's say, 24 years? But he won't get that, will he? He'll end up in a warm room with a telly. The only... I'm sorry to laugh, but why is it that criminals have tellies? Why is it that people always refer to? They don't refer to the fact that they'll have a deck of cards or newspapers or any of that. No, it's always the telly that really annoys people. Often, when they refer to the telly, they talk about the colour telly, but I suppose in these days when they're all colour, it's less of an issue. Yes, he will end up. I mean, one way, you can look at it two ways, can't you? You can look at it the way that says he's a nasty, evil, vile, despicable creature, and nothing is too bad for him. Yes, you can. I don't think that's a particularly civilised way of going about it, but that's what you can do. Or you can look at it another way and say, well, actually, he's ill. He's not well. He's poorly. He's going to be sent to a psychiatric unit because he's mentally unwell. Now, it's Austria. We don't care. We don't care what happens in Austria much. We did for a while in the 1940s, but we've kind of stopped bothering since then. But in the end, if the man is ill, do we punish him? Or do we treat him? Do we look after him because he's poorly? I don't know the answer to it. Nobody knows the answer to it. It's one of those things where you have a view. But yes, he will go to a nice warm cellar. One of the newspapers today, I think it was the Express. Yeah. And I didn't quite grasp the Express's take on the story. They said that Joseph Fritzl admitted his guilt after a secret deal offered him the chance to serve his sentence in a cushy jail. Fritzl was told he could avoid a grim high-security prison if he agreed to change his plea on the more serious charges. Remember, he changed his plea to guilty at the last hour, really, wasn't it? The 12th hour. The deal was struck by defence lawyer Rudolf Meyer and prosecution officials, and it'll give Fritzl a single room in a jail which boasts a gym, tennis courts, football pitches, darts boards. Inmates are allowed meditation classes, singing and cookery classes. But one insider said it's an insult to his daughter Elizabeth, who suffered in a windowless, rat-infested dungeon where she did not have regular meals or exercise for 24 years. But all the stories yesterday were saying that Fritzl changed his plea without consultation with his lawyer, that his lawyer was as surprised as everybody else at the dramatic change. Well, it doesn't add up, does it? Either he did consult with his lawyer and negotiate a deal, or he didn't. I've only seen the Express hint at that. But hey, what do I know? See you tomorrow. Ta-ra now.
Can Manchester City make it through to the last 8 of the UEFA Cup? Find out.